What's going on, everyone? Pi Studios here, and today I'm going to be talking about a game that's beloved to a lot of people, at least I imagine. And that would be Sonic Generations. Recently, we've been getting a lot of attention on the game on Twitter, and that's due to a recent leak from Special Nick. He's the co-founder of Xbox Era, despite the fact that it's a PlayStation leak, which is kind of weird, but whatever. Either way, the tweet that he recently put out cryptically describes what's going to be the next state of play, which was like Rise of the Ronin, other games. I don't really care. We all care about the Sonic, and that was in his tweet. And the way it's phrased kind of implies that Shadow's going to be in the game in some way. Of course, he has the rival battle, but I mean more so as in like actually taking a more major role in the story. We have heard about a Sonic and Shadow game within the last 6 to 8 months, but I didn't really think it would be a remaster. That is kind of interesting. The way Zippo described it made it seem like it was going to be an original game, but it seems like it's not anymore. I mean, it could be 2 separate games, I'm not sure. We'll have to see. Of course, I'm personally down for a Generations remaster, as I think it honestly really needs it. Not in like the graphical department, but the main thing it needs is, for 1, better PC port, 2, more access, essentially just meaning it needs to be on more devices. The PC port is definitely the thing that needs the most love, as it's really, really old. It was made in 2011, and it runs fine on most systems, but if you have Intel Arc graphics, it's just not going to work too well because it's DirectX 9. If you have even like AMD integrated graphics, it still doesn't work well, despite the fact that most of the integrated graphics out today are going to be better than any graphics card from 2011, so I don't know why it doesn't perform well. The actual like graphical options menu is not actually built into the game itself. It's a separate menu, which half the time like doesn't remember your settings. So across the board, it definitely needs some love. From what Zippo said, it's going to be not like remade, but basically brought over into Hedgehog Engine 2, which is definitely an interesting prospect because Hedgehog Engine 1 is still not a bad engine graphically. My only guess is that Hedgehog Engine 2 is more modern, so they're just going to use that instead, which would make sense as a lot of the staff who actually made Hedgehog Engine 1 are either A, not at Sega, or B, working on other things. So I guess that kind of makes sense. It still is kind of a shame because Hedgehog Engine 1 still looks really nice, especially in like Unleashed, but I think this will ultimately be okay. The main thing that I am worried about though is 1, obviously having a bad studio make it. We don't know who's making it. At the time of me recording this, it's the 29th, and I'm probably going to upload the video on the 30th. Obviously the state of play hasn't happened yet. Oh, and also I forgot to mention, the state of play, almost like a day after, was actually announced. So yeah, I definitely think this is happening for sure. We'll have to see, obviously, if Sonic is in it. Just going off that tweet, he should be, unless he was just pulling our leg, which would be pretty funny. I know a lot of people would be mad, but a lot of people would be happy too, because then that means Sonic Generations wouldn't be ruined with a bad remaster. And let me kind of elaborate on that. If you don't know, Sonic Colors got a remaster in 2021, and it was actual garbage. That's a nice way to put it. On the Switch, it was absolutely broken. On other platforms, it was fine. It was just okay. It still had a ton of issues, and some of those issues are still here. Like, for example, the audio being all mono, or let me rephrase. The audio used to be in stereo, but sound effects would go from the left to the right ear cup with no rhyme or reason. And then there was also the issue with audio balancing, where certain sound effects are just way too loud. Small things like that, that especially on Switch add up to be a really bad experience. If you haven't, I would go watch my old review on it. It's not a very good video, but it still highlights most of the issues that Sonic Colors Ultimate has, at least on the Switch. Sonic Origins has definitely been getting better. They have fixed most of the major issues. For example, things like roll lock, things like the Game Gear audio being bad, as well as certain little glitches here and there, which is definitely nice. I'm glad they did that. But at the same time, there's other issues that are still in it. For example, when you're taking the Knuckles routes in Sonic CD that they made specifically for Origins, they're really bad. Like the way they're designed makes it look like it's like baby's first Mario Maker stage. It's genuinely terrible. Also, the fact that at the launch of Sonic Origins Plus, they introduced a glitch where if you're playing as Tails and you go to Labyrinth Zone, you'll just crash the game for no reason. Now, thankfully, they did fix it with that most recent update, but that was in the game for months. They didn't fix it until like the last 3 months. I think it was fixed relatively recently in the grand scheme of things. So that glitch was in the game for months, and that was literally game breaking. You could not play Sonic 1 as Tails because of that, because you would literally just crash the game at Labyrinth. which is, it's just such an odd issue. Like, how do you even do that? How does that happen? Across the board, Sonic Origins is definitely getting better. I think that was probably one of the last updates, if not the last, but Sonic Origins now, I can finally say, is like actually a halfway decent product, while Sonic Colors Ultimate it's irredeemable. They're not fixing it. I don't really foresee any updates ever coming to that again. So yeah, obviously the main thing I'm worried about is getting an actually good studio to do it. Not that Blind Squirrel is even inherently that bad, because their Mass Effect Trilogy remaster is fine. It's like not broken. It runs fairly well on everything besides the base Xbox One, which that's just a base Xbox One issue. Honestly, what I would like to see Sega do is just make it internally, because they have the staff to do it. If you didn't know, the Persona 5 Royal remaster was made in-house at Sega Japan. They have the people that can make ports, make good ports at that. The P5R ports, I think they can definitely do it as long as they're given the time, the resources, and the capacity to actually do so. Because if you look at Sonic Colors Ultimate, that game started development around summer of 2020, which is possibly the worst time to start making a game. The game has started development in mid-2020 and then came out in mid-2021. They had less than a year to develop that port, and that was putting Wii code specifically made for the Nintendo Wii, which is PowerPC, by the way, a 2.5-decade-old architecture, porting that over to x86 and ARM for the consoles, and then also having to add new stuff, upgrade the visuals, upgrade the soundtrack, upgrade cutscenes, which they didn't. They just use AI upscale. But like, they had so many things to do in just a year, to where I don't even necessarily blame Blind Squirrel. I blame Sega for not giving them enough time. They had a year, and the only reason why they had a year is because Sega had literally nothing, no products, to capitalize on the Sonic movie, so they wanted something out as soon as humanly possible. They thought Sonic Colors would be the easiest. Which, no. Quite literally no. What would have been easier was literally just putting Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, Dreamcast, emulator, cartridge, boom. They literally could have done that, and that would have been easier, cheaper, and probably better in that same amount of time or less. Also, I kind of wanted to talk about the prospect of new content coming into the game. In that tweet that Special Nick made, he had said Sonic will be in the shadow of his generation. I don't even have the tweet up, I don't remember. But basically, it said Shadow in it, so we're going to presume that Shadow's in the game. So would they be adding, like, Shadow the Hedgehog stages, like, from his game? Or are they going to be, like, adding stages from SA2? Like, specific Shadow speed stages that are in SA2? That would be cool. Or not even that, but just, like, they have more games they can base off of now. Like, they have Sonic Lost World, Sonic Forces, and Frontiers, and arguably even Team Sonic Racing if they would want to bring those themes over. I don't think they really would, but it's something. Also Sonic Mania, too. Sonic Mania would be great. I would love to see, like, Press Garden, Titanic Monarch. Those would be really cool to have in 3D, and especially in Generations. I think that would be amazing. The main issue, though, is that the level designers for Generations now work at Nintendo. So either A, they're going to have to hire them back just for this port, which they're not going to do, or they get the guys who made, I guess, the Forces levels, which no. Maybe even, like, the guys who made the Frontiers levels. I don't even know who made the Frontiers levels. I don't know offhand. I know for Forces it was like 3 different people. They definitely have that option of adding in more levels, which they really should. Generations is a very short game. You can beat it in like a few hours. It's probably around the same runtime as Forces. We just excused it because the game was good. What they could also do, remaster the assets from the 3DS version, bring over 3DS stages. I will say though, I've been playing that 3DS version here relatively recently. In fact, I literally just played it last night. It's not very good. I will say I like the classic stages. I think the classic stages are mostly better. The modern stages, though, the camera is so zoomed in to the point where you can barely see what you're doing. You run into things constantly because the camera is so focused on Sonic. Sonic probably takes up like 1/10 of the screen, which you may think is small, but on a small little dinky 3DS screen, he's going to take up a lot of it, especially if you don't have an XL. The levels in and of themselves, not great, unless you're playing Classic. Classic is definitely better. Either way, though, I would like to see some of those stages come over, like Emerald Coast, even like Mushroom Hill. I think that would be cool to have as well. Or Casino Night, too. That would actually be nice, because they have assets. They have HD assets for Casino Night. They just didn't use them in an actual stage. So I think that would be really nice to have. They definitely have a lot of avenues to where they can add more content to this game and it not be a monumental task. Although, of course, adding anything to a pre-existing game is gonna take time. And from the very little we know about the development process here, I have a sneaking suspicion the game started development in 2022 because in one of the Tales 2 videos, there is a screenshot of a Sonic Generations cutscene that looks different. It doesn't look like remastered per se, it just looks different. I don't really know if that's obviously the Gens remaster because they haven't told us yet. And when someone asked Tyson Hess about it, he said that he just painted over the original image because the original cutscene was so low quality. But at the same time, that doesn't make sense because most companies have an archive of things. like if you look at Sonic Colors Ultimate, they included the data for the cutscenes in the game. Even though they didn't use it, the data for the cutscenes is in the game. So like clearly Sega obviously has that cutscene data somewhere. So that really doesn't make sense because why would they not give you the highest resolution source possible? Why would they just give you whatever was on the 360 disc? That doesn't make sense. He very well could be telling the truth. I personally don't think so. It could be like a combination of, oh, this thing is true, but this thing is also true. That's kind of what I think. I don't really think he just painted over the original cutscene. I think that he maybe touched up the quote-unquote remastered cutscene because it wasn't done yet. So he just painted over that one frame he needed. I will say though, it'll be interesting to see what they do as far as the voice acting, because in Gens it's fine. It works. They don't need to replace it. But what they would need to do is, for one, Roger has a couple of lines that sound like they're recorded off a MacBook. Like dead ass. Some of it's like a few lines in the game, some absolutely terrible. So ideally they replace those, which I don't even know if they can, because I don't know if he can even do that voice anymore. But also, if Shadow has a more prevalent role in the game, they're gonna have to re-record lines, or not re-record, but record lines for him in the first place, in which case they're probably gonna need Sonic lines too. So I don't know, we'll see what he does there, because like, if they're going to be adding content for Shadow, I don't know if they'll want to even tie it into the story, but of course he'll need some lines, like for example, like for grunts, or like when he falls on a pit or jumps or something like that, they'll need sounds for that. And I guess they could pull it from Forces or something, but that it would just be out of place. There's a lot of different things that we need to consider when talking about a remaster like this, especially because their Special Nick is literally implying that Shadow's going to be in it. So I don't know, we'll see. It could be completely off base. It could be a Sonic Generations remaster and then a Sonic and Shadow game. That would be cool too. I actually would like that because I definitely want to see more original content in the franchise, especially after Frontiers recycled 3 different level themes. It's really boring, so I would like to see more original concepts. But I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to having Shadow-specific content in Gens, as well as the right team to actually port over the assets from 1 to 2, and also, you know, make sure it looks right, make sure it functions right, especially with the physics. If they mess up the physics, oh my god, Sonic Generations is going to be done. It's going to be ruined. It's going to be done. Like, why would you even bother with playing the remaster? If they mess up the physics, we're done. The elephant in the room, though, is that Sonic Generations, the original versions, whether it be on PS3, on 360, and on Steam, they're probably going to get delisted because, if you didn't know, which you probably do, but if you didn't know, Sonic 1, 2, 3, and Knuckles on Steam and Xbox, and I think PlayStation as well, were all delisted when Sonic Origins came around, which most certainly sucks. That's not fun at all, but it breaks compatibility with mods, and it gives the consumer less choice, which sucks, genuinely. That really sucks to happen. They shouldn't do that. But at the same time, from a business standpoint, I obviously get that, because if you're trying to sell a game to people, yet that game is available at a better price somewhere else, if you can avoid that being the case, then of course you're going to do it, right? So I get it, but at the same time, it still really sucks for the consumer. And most likely what's going to happen with Sonic Generations is that once this port gets announced on the 31st, but by the time the remaster actually comes out, the original game is gone. I can almost guarantee it. They're going to take it off digital stores, meaning Xbox Live, Steam, PSN. It's going to be gone. Any physical copies while they're probably going to stay around the same price, they're definitely going to go up in value over time, especially on the 360, because that backwards compatible version is still there. And speaking of which, I don't know if they actually keep the backwards compatible version around, because back-compat games have been delisted, meaning like you can't even like use a disc anymore, which that wouldn't necessarily surprise me if Sega does that. It would suck, and I obviously don't want them to do that. But at the same time, we've seen with other companies, they don't care. They'll do what they please. So really, it wouldn't surprise me if that does happen. Not only that, but this will obviously pretty much break any mods. Any mods made for Hedgehog Engine 1 Sonic Gens are obviously not going to transfer without a lot of work being done, if not just being completely remade. So it's going to pretty much kill the modding scene for the original generations, which is a shame. But at the same time, we're at a point to where the original Sonic Generations PC port is so old, even computers that are more powerful than the ones playing it back then in 2011 still can't run it. Just because, for one, it's DirectX 9, and it's just old. I have no other reasoning. It's just really old. Me personally, I can sacrifice having mods for the sake of it actually functioning properly. I like having 60 FPS and it not being at 60 FPS on my my little Ultrabook. It really sucks because it's powerful enough to do it. I can run Bayonetta at 60 FPS, which is a more intensive game, but Sonic Generations, no, God forbid. What I see happening as far as mods go is that most of the mods made by people who are still making mods today are probably going to be brought over. Any like mods that aren't popular or are bad are probably just going to get left behind, which definitely sucks, and that's definitely going to suck for those who maybe want to go back and play those who never bought Sonic Gens in the first place. But at the same time, key resellers are a thing. Thankfully, there's so many key resellers that keep keys for games that are delisted. Granted, they'll go up in price, but it is what it is. That, and not that I'm condoning piracy, but Sonic Generations has been cracked forever. If you really want to get an old mod working, you can make it work. That's all I'm going to say. I'm excited for the prospect of a remaster. I say prospect, but it's pretty much confirmed. I'm obviously very excited for a Sonic Generations remaster. So, I mean, I'm a very big fan of the game. I would love to see it brought over to more modern platforms, especially PS5, where I can use that DualSense. Ooh. Oh, it's gonna be good. Like I said earlier, I just hope it's made by the right people and Sega doesn't rush them to make it. If development started in 2022, I think it's gonna be good. If they started in 2023, especially around the time Sonic Origins Plus launched, no. We're done. We're done. You're done. Yeah, if you guys like the video, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. I will say, though, before I leave, that I actually am going to be putting early access to my videos on both Patreon and YouTube membership. So if you kind of want to see like a rough draft of my videos before they come out, they'll be on there. When I really would appreciate it if you guys support, that would be awesome. Pretty much all the money that I get from that is going to be going back into this channel, whether it be buying games or buying equipment, just to make the videos better. I would really appreciate it. Before I leave, I do want to thank Asu Crystal for being my $2 Patreon supporter. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.